Welcome back to Pros and Cons with aka Bog and Captain 1701. We've got another episode of Shuffle Trek, and today was actually a really fun one. We got our first DS9, I think, in the series we're doing.
And it's probably one of the best.
And so, yeah, I think I tell one of the better episodes. Well, and it was actually two episodes. We decided if it was a two-parter that we would watch them both. And we hit the Dias cast, and it's not technically it's episode 1 and 2, but you do kind of have to watch these together. They really are back-to-back episodes. So I think we made the right decision. I do have full notes. Those out.
Wow, what did you write that on?
I have like
Cardboard?
Well, I bought a bunch of like cheap like water paper for doing spray paint art on, and I don't like the way it works with the paint, so now it's just scrap.
Fair enough. Like, wow, yours are like laminated and everything. I'm like,
fancy scrap paper.
I just found like what was handy and just started writing stuff.
That's usually what I do. But let's see. Let me make sure here. Yeah, we start off with episode 1, and it's like Garrick and oh yeah, here, go ahead.
I do want to say real quick, like, you know, we had all of the TNGs and then the Picards, and then we had like what 2 or 3 Voyagers in a row, and it's awesome to get into DS9 because DS9's I think your favorite show as well as mine.
Yep.
Star Trek series.
Unapologetically, DS9 is my favorite series in Star Trek.
I think it's the deepest one. I think it has the best side characters of any Star Trek, and it's unmatched, like not even close. And it's like some of the best recurring characters. Not like, you know, Garrick, kind of piggybacking into these 2 episodes, like Garrick is a recurring character. He's not a main character in the show. And he's probably one of the top recurring characters, probably one of the top 10 Star Trek characters of all time.
He's really interesting. We'll get DS9, you know, it was really the first real big departure from Gene Roddenberry's direct vision. But it really built upon that and tried to do something different with it, and I think it was very successful, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I think we'll see as we go through this episode. Garrick has some of the best lines in Star Trek, without a doubt.
Oh my god,
dude, even just all right here, just at the beginning of the episode, it starts out with Garrick and Bashir sitting down for a meal, and they're discussing Shakespeare and tragedy. And it was just like this really like good conversation, and the back and forth was excellent. And you know, Garrick's just like perspective of like how Bashir has to eat fast, and how you know he's afraid of starvation. I noted in a rush equals fear of starvation. He's like comparing humans to other aliens on the promenade.
And I want to point out they are eating soup, which I have pointed this out in many a Star Trek episode before, that I'm convinced that the only food staple that Starfleet eats now is soup. Because Voyager, all they ate was freaking soup, and then Bashir is like eating soup.
Yeah.
I mean, you have access to every food on the face of the Earth and the galaxy, the universe.
Maybe we just keep getting soup episodes.
Every episode, anyway. That's just like I've noticed in a lot of Star Trek, a lot of soup eating. I like it though. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
I need to send you my soup recipe. I've been meaning to. But we have this whole interaction with them, and then Bashir has to get going, and we get a little interaction with Kira talking about the Elosians, and like how to accommodate them for their room, and how it's like damaging the carpet, and like these measures that they. And I thought it was an interesting kind of little bit of day-to-day DS9 babble, you know.
He was talking about how he wanted to put red carpet in there, and he's just like, they don't see red on this color spectrum.
Avoid red or orange.
But one thing about the Garrick Bashir chat, like Garrick doesn't like Shakespeare,
Right.
but throughout the episode, he ends up quoting Shakespeare a couple times.
Well, and he
He's like,
like,
"Well, I saw Brutus was going to kill him right off the bat," and
yeah,
Bashir's like,
he wasn't
"The point of
impressed with his skills.
the point of the trend," and so it was kind of going back to like their discussion, talking about how like, yeah, Caesar was this great warrior and king and stuff, and then he didn't expect to be betrayed by his best friends, and like you see, that's like epic foreshadowing of this like entire 2 episodes.
Yeah. Well, and the whole interaction with like Kira and Bashir is like broken up when we get a big explosion,
Yeah.
and Garrett's shop is bombed, and they real quick identify it was an overloaded conduit. But that after running some scans, they notice there's some trace elements that don't make sense, and so like Cisco orders the lockdown, and it's like a lot's happening pretty quick. And at least it's the first time. I don't know if we've had it before, but it's the first time in this set of episodes that someone refers to Garrick as a simple tailor, with
Yep.
hints at his connections to the Obsidian Order.
And I think it is the first time that we're like really getting, well, because this isn't the first time that we've met his like Anabrantane, which we'll meet later.
It really kind of fleshed out. He'd been hinted at his
Yeah.
background, but this really kind of solidified it in this series
They
here.
basically spell it out for you.
And,
He was a spy.
And we do get a moment where he's in sickbay and he's listing out people that have a grudge against him, and he does note that Kira doesn't like him. And Odo's like, no, she doesn't, but if she wanted you dead, you'd be dead. It's like,
Yeah.
dang,
We were talking about great lines earlier, and Garrick had a great line, kind of when he's in the sick bay, and I don't know if he's being interrogated or just kind of questioned, but someone calls him like a liar or something. Because he's like, you never. He says something like, "The point of a good liar is to never tell the same lie twice."
I've got that one written down too. It's like, where is that? I think it there. Okay, so like, let me see those. I think that comes a little bit later here. Yeah. Where I'm looking. They have, yeah, there's the whole interaction with about like the association with like the boy who cried wolf, and like Bashir like shares that whole story with him, right? And he mentions that he was like exiled for a failure to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And then he says the lesson he took from the story of the boy who cried wolf was never tell the same lie twice, which kind of left Bashir like, which I love that. Yeah.
He keeps like, and I think it's cool. Like it's the alien versus human kind of interpretation of these human stories. Like he interprets Shakespeare a lot different than Bashir does, and he interprets the folklore of the wolf story a lot differently than Bashir does, because
and it's very much
like,
the Cardassian mindset. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. So that's what's one of the cool things about DS9 is like the diversity of the aliens.
Yeah.
And they're so well built that like you can.
Well, and it's not just hammering you over the head with like, oh, did you know the Cardassians? It's like listing out these things. They're like showing you through the episode, and like using Garrick as a representative of like their culture to like introduce you to these concepts and these like things that they hold important, or the like skills that they value. And it's, I think, a more organic or way to like build them up, And
I think it just goes to the writing of this, not just the episode, but DS9 in general. Like they do this throughout the entire series, where like it's not so lazy like different new shows are. It's so well flushed out. The cultures of each character are flushed out so well.
Yeah.
And just the aliens in general.
We move on from there to like an awesome scene where like Garrick enters the security office and like Odo invites him to search ship manifest to try and identify anyone who might have had a grudge against him and might have wanted him dead. And at one point, Garrick has another great line where um, he like Odo's like he offers to let Odo like leave the area, and Odo's like I'm gonna let you just sit here with unfettered access. And Garrick says something like, "What makes you think I haven't seen your files?" And that really
Right.
like rankles Odo. Like Odo's just like he really did not like that, you know. And I thought that was another really good line.
You know, Quark has.
It's
By the way, no Quark in this episode.
right, and a lot of the other characters make single scenes or single set scenes. So it seemed like it was really kind of it's one of those episodes which we didn't even notice last time, but the last episode we did Shuffle Track on Voyager was actually a LeVar Burton episode, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I'll be interested to go back and see who directed this one. I didn't look when I wasn't paying that much attention. But as they're going through, um, O'Brien comes in and he like very quietly like takes Odo to the side and tells him about some of the findings they've made, which is that there's some indication it was a Flaxian favored type of device. And Odo notes that, oh, we just had a Flaxian agent arrive on the station earlier today. And so let's go and investigate him. And they introduce this like alien perfume dealer. And there's
Yeah.
this great scene with Odo just like kind of interrogating him in one of the conference rooms, like talking to him and going back and forth. And he mentions, oh, I have a friend I'd like to maybe pick a perfume for. And throughout this scene, he keeps like selecting bottles and asking about them. And there's, something floral, something musky, something spicy. And he starts mixing them together. And of course, this guy is like, oh, I don't think she would like that if you added the spicy to that scent, you know? And he's like, oh, or is it because if you mix these together, it creates a gas that causes a heart attack when it's inhaled?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, oh, what? Like shock.
Yeah.
How can you? Oh, I would have known. I just genuinely thought she wouldn't like the scent. And
He
that
says
was like such a great little like interaction between the two.
that the Flaxian, he has a line that says, I don't think your lady friend would like that aroma.
Yeah.
And then like one of the cool things too is like that little guy, the Flaxian guy, he I thought that was like one of the best moments of the show because him and it also adds the interrogations in in this whole like series of 2 episodes are great because there's a whole bunch of interrogations.
Yeah. And
Um,
it really was a great spotlight on both Garrick and on Odo. Um, they let this guy kind of like go, and he mentions he's going to get off station. And the next thing we get is a little back and forth with O'Brien and Odo mentioning a tracking device that's been installed quite deviously in their ship. No way to detect it, right? And so Odo enters the runabout and gets ready to leave, just to see Garrick sitting in the ship, insisting that he's going to go with him on following this individual, right, and tracking him. Get a little back and forth, and Odo surprisingly reneges and is like, all right, well, we got to get going or we're going to lose him. And they start following the ship, and just as they're following it, it starts powering up its warp, and then it blows up. And we actually get a pretty cool little a graphic there. We get to see his ship, and we get to see the explosion. And so their whole trip is cut short, is what I wrote down. And I think that's even the line that they spoke, and I was laughing there. And of course, this time the sensors reveal that traces of information that lead them to believe this is a device used by Romulans, an interference field or something, right? Yeah. And at this point we get one of my absolute favorite lines from the 2 episodes from Garrick, which is the truth is just an excuse for a poor imagination.
ooh,
I like that one. I thought that was a good line.
that's a great. I didn't write
Yeah.
that one down. But that is a
He threw that
fantastic
at
part of
Odo.
the
Yeah, yeah.
show.
The truth is just an excuse for a poor imagination. And and then we get this little scene with the Romulans, and they like call him up, and the Romulans are like, oh yeah, yeah, we totally blew that guy
We
up.
totally, yeah.
We've been looking for him. We wanted to blow him up. He's an assassin. We've got a warrant out for him. It was legal for us to blow him up. So yeah, we blew him up. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like,
I
yeah,
somewhat agree. Like, I mean, he was an assassin,
right.
obviously.
Yeah, he could have assassinated some Romulan. They're looking for him, and they found him, and they're like, oh.
But
But
yeah, the just like Cisco was just like, whatever, dude.
yeah,
And and then
oh,
two, like, and this is the crazy part of this scene. I wrote down this is my exact note. I like that DS9 toned down the Romulan uniforms for the show. And then like Odo, right after I wrote that down, says, it looks like they found a decent tailor. And I'm like, oh, they read my mind.
nice.
Because he totally like remarks on their uniforms. Because I think this might be the first time we see the Romulans on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, with like an
And their
updated
uniforms,
style, easier
they're
style.
not all chunky like they were on TNG.
Yeah,
Um, and so I think that cracked me up
like a little sly
with
little
Odo
nod.
with Garrick being a tailor and stuff, and Odo talks about them getting a good tailor finally for their uniform. So that
Yeah,
was a nice little jab.
I liked it.
I hated the TNG like Romulan uniforms; those were terrible.
It's,
They look like they were wearing like coat hangers.
they're like metal. Yeah. Well, and so next we actually get another really cool scene where we learn about Odo. Odo comments to Cisco that he has resources, and he requests a runabout. To which Cisco's like, "Yeah, sure, go for it." And the next scene we have is him in this cave, which I'm pretty sure we've seen these caves in Star Trek many times, as well as many other series. They must be like off the lot in the
It's
back, you
just the
know.
standard Star Trek brown foam rock cave.
Well, I'm pretty sure we saw
That
the same caves in like Smallville and some
oh
other
yeah,
shows too. It's just the back lot, you know. But we have this weird Cardassian, and it's like shy. We never see his face. He tells Odo he's changed his face, and he doesn't want him to see the new face. And it's very unusual because we don't get to see his face. We see his eyes, so we clearly know it's a Cardassian. He's wearing like a Cardassian gold uniform.
you hear him
Um,
talk.
yeah, and they actually it's a really interesting like back and forth. And he tells him that yeah, what you're looking into is a much smaller piece of something much larger. And you know, it mentions like resources shifting, and even they're not fully aware of what's really going on, you know. Um, and I think he mentions, you know, it's a small piece of something larger, and then Odo questions if there's an invasion. And then we have this interesting moment when he mentions that 5 of Tane's former operatives were killed yesterday. Garrick was the only one to survive. And he says they were murdered, and I get a further clarification. Oh, 3 died of natural causes and 2 accidental deaths.
Because I mean, when high up people, without going into details, die of natural causes or other things, it's so
Accidents, yeah.
accurate.
Yeah, and so he gives Odo the names and tells him to show them to Garrick. And he mentions that this makes him even, and but that if he learns anything from his tailor friend, if he brings it back, that perhaps that will put him back into Odo's debt. And so I thought this was an interesting interaction. And as we moved on, one of my thoughts was, I wonder if there's any expanded Trek lore out there that kind of explains who that character is, because I'm very curious.
Like a Nobrantane, like Obsidian Order novels.
Like a novel or a book or comic that just refers to like Odo's past, or like explains who that character might be, because I thought that was interesting.
Real
Uh,
quick, there's like it sounds like on your end there's like cars driving by.
Cars.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of
Matthew's like playing video games, but he has his headphones on, so I don't know what you're talking about. And I can see on my
Weird.
mic that I'm not broadcasting any noise.
Huh.
Maybe you're hearing the um, computer revving up. Can't do anything about that.
I don't know. Either way,
But I can see
one
that
of
on my mic levels, the only time I've got any kind of noise pickup is when I'm speaking. So here, like, if I'm quiet, there's nothing.
range.
Yeah.
Either way,
Maybe you're hearing jet noises from like, I don't know if you're listening. Are you playing the video on your side?
yeah,
Like you have the video playing on your speakers,
yeah.
so you might be hearing the background music. It's
Anyway,
negative 50 decibels. I'll turn it down a little more.
oh well.
Anyways,
Anyway, going on. So we kind of find out that like, um, Garrick is Anabrantain's like favored protege in the Obsidian Order. Like Anabrantain was the leader of the Obsidian Order,
well,
and
like
so he
first,
was
like
kind of
Odo goes back to him and he shows him the list of names, and Garrick's all like shocked and everything, right? And that's actually the scene where um, Odo admits that he knows Garrick blew up his own shop and like confronts him, which was like amazing. I thought that was awesome. That was like a really turnabout moment because up to that point it hadn't even really been hinted at, and you get the whole explanation of that he did it. I think the quote is actually, "I think you enjoyed blowing up your own shop a bit." And that's when they get into the whole back and forth with an Abrantain, and Garrick finally kind of comes clean with him. Garrick's actually shocked that Odo figured out that he blew up his own shop. In fact, Odo's like, well, look at that. That's a reaction on your face I don't think I've ever seen before. And like Odo like totally does like surprise him because Garrick was totally on it. And they get into it, the specifics, and even later in the episode, the second episode, Tane's like, that was a genius move because it brought Odo in, and Odo's like, you could have just asked for help, and he's like, well, I didn't know if you would believe me. It's a very much a spy thing to do, very Garrick, and also a very Odo moment that Odo's like he's like, I knew it the moment. What was it? What did he mention was like the signal to Odo? You know what I mean? I'm trying to. I don't even think I wrote it down. Um, but yeah, like Odo was like, I knew it as soon as I saw that in the shop or whatever it was. Right? Oh,
well,
because when he saw the Phylaxian, because he was a perfume poison dealer, and he was
yeah, he
like,
was a
yeah, he's not a
poisoner.
bomber, and so he
He's like
was like,
assassins stick to one method of killing is kind of what he came to the conclusion of. He's like, if you're a if you're a if if you're gonna go stab someone, like that's your MO.
yep,
Or if you're gonna poison someone, like you're not just gonna switch to bombing someone.
yeah. So I thought that was a great Odo moment. Um, and then he invites Garrick. He tells Garrick, um, that's actually the moment when Garrick is like, well, let me reach out and make a contact, right? And you get he does this thing where he has a scrambled signal, and Odo's like, that's an interesting way to scramble a signal. And Garrick's like, yeah, I thought you might be, find that interesting. And you get, they reach out to Nabrantaim's housekeeper, Mila, I believe, right? Who seems to have almost a motherly or very close relationship with Garrick, and I believe we actually see her later on, several seasons later, when he's like fighting for the liberation of Cardassia.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, Anabrantain lives.
Dun dun
And
dun.
I mean, because like he survives at the end. I think he's captured by the founders for the Dominion.
They find isn't he in the prison later on or something like that?
I
Like
think
Bashir
something like,
runs into
yeah,
him.
he is. Yeah, he is in that asteroid.
I think that's what it
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
but anyway, like so you discover that there's this whole plot now that Kane has been using the Obsidian Order to work with the Romulan Tal'Shiar to invade the Gamma Quadrant and attack the Founders' homeworld to spark, to like hopefully take out, um, the Founders and end the Dominion.
Yeah, they have this conversation with like Garrick's like motherly figure, and they decide it's time for like the second shuttle trip, and they're
Yep.
like loading up, and you get this scene with Garrick like fucking with Bashir, where Bashir's like, "Oh, is there anything you need me to do?" And he's like, "You know what?" He's like, "If I don't make
Yeah.
it back in 3 days, go into my quarters, and behind this hidden panel, there's an isolinear chip. I need you to eat it." And Bashir's like, "What?" And he's like, "No, doctor, come on." And he's like, "Oh, you're joking." He's like, "Yes." So he's like goofing around with Bashir.
Now,
And that was
how
my
much you
nose,
want
is
to bet
fucking
that?
with him.
How much you want to bet that Garrick has a false panel with 1,000 isolinear chips of spycraft hidden in his shop or whatever?
Possible. Bashir would 100% go look if Garrick didn't come back in a few days. Which, of course,
Right.
he doesn't. So I bet you Bashir looked. Um, we also get the, there's like I guess that's actually when he talks a little bit about Thane's housekeeper with Odo, and my note was like Odo's interesting analysis about like how the with the interaction of like Garrick and her, about how like it seems like she's someone he might actually care about. And there's another great line where where he talks about Odo's justice, and like I thought in like this conversation about what justice is to Odo, and like how Garrick like asks him like if there's any people that are like really more than just an interesting thing to study. Which, of course, by this point in the season, we kind of know Odo's got a thing for Kira. And, of course, later on, we kind of get this hint where, like, Kira's like, we got to go get Odo, too. So there's, like, a little hint of all that, and then they reunite. They're like, oh, hey, and they just are like, but no hugs or nothing. The Kira-Odo relationship is building at this point.
Well, Garrick also remarks that Odo's entire philosophy is based around justice.
Yeah.
Like his entire ethos and life philosophy is just justice.
Well, and Odo responds to him too and says, "If there was, I wouldn't tell you." Which is I just love that whole interaction, and they start getting to their destination, and they note that a ship starts decloaking. They're like, "Why is there Romulans in Cardassian space?" And then I did have a note here that says poor scaling, because that runabout should be a lot smaller than that bird of prey or warbird. The warbird is twice as big as a galaxy, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I don't think it's twice as big.
It
It's
is.
it's it's bigger, but it's not twice as big.
Is
Ah.
I'll send you references after this episode. But like,
Either
yeah,
way,
they're supposed to be
Romulan
huge ships.
the Romulan warbirds, I think, are the coolest alien ships.
Seeing a combined Romulan Cardassian fleet is pretty awesome. That was like a pretty amazing moment, because usually you'd have one or the other, and so actually getting like a combined fleet with different alien ships was super cool.
I always thought Cardassian ships looked kind of dumb.
I'm fine with them. I think they
They
fit
look
the
like
Cardassians, and
they look
they're one of the only species that has different variants, because like as you get deeper into it, there's like, in addition to the Galler class, there's Kelvin class, and then there's also like these ones had like modifications for the Obsidian Order class, and then they also have little like smaller ships and stuff, and plus we get to see the freighters. So as a species, we actually get a fair variety of like Cardassian ships overall, and they all kind of do fit together.
the that warbird. Those warbirds though are just those
It's
are awesome ship design.
really great effects in the whole like the whole issue, right? And I had my next note was like something about the Tal'Shiar in control because they bring him to the bridge, I think, and like he mentions that Garrett can walk around, but he can't be on the bridge or anywhere without an escort, and I noted I have a what is it? It says you end up saying nothing. I don't even know what that line was in response to. So, but I liked it at the time, I
Well,
guess.
I think when the like Odo, what they referring to is that the because the pithy dialogue between all the Cardassians all the time is them just lying to each other,
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah, it
and
was.
so the Romulan guy is just like baffled because like they're using all this like high language and they're just like trading barbs, but they're not actually saying anything to each other.
Yeah,
The Romulan guy's like, you're not even saying, like, you're just
you end
like,
up
you don't
saying
even
nothing.
trust,
Yeah.
like they don't even trust each other, and all they do is talk shit to each other.
Well, and they
And
reveal the
like,
plan that it's like it's time for like a first strike and this like bold action, and it's not sanctioned, and that they're gonna come back after they're victorious to like take their positions and command again, and it's like this whole grand like thing. And of course, that's like basically where we kind of get the fade out. We get the moment where Kane invites Garrick to join him, and they do the handshake, the little fist pump, and that's when we get our fade out with Odo like frowning in the background,
and then we're into part two. Guy is cast.
which
Could I,
is awesome.
yeah. Could I take the recap on this one?
Sure, yeah.
Cool. Because I thought this one was kind of the better one of the two, and this was like our original episode shows.
Hmm.
Um, but it's got a lot of parallels to the first episode. Um, so like the first part opens up with Bashir and O'Brien, and Bashir's trying to talk about philosophy of literature, and O'Brien's just trying to eat, and
My note was
and
O'Brien
O'Brien,
just chows.
he's just totally uninterested, and he's like, why is lunch, he says like, lunch is an arena for philosophical debate, and then O'Brien drops like, back in the old country my mother told me that you never talk during lunch, type of like Irish stuff. And then he says that we can't like chill and eat,
Yeah,
basically.
and like Bashir's like comments about how he's just like worried about Garrick and Odo, and we get kind of like a little recap of like a last episode. Oh, the shuttle has probably hasn't been destroyed because if it had been, we would have found debris. Basically, and then
I just
yeah,
I just thought that this scene was cool because it kind of showed the differences and the dynamics of the two friendships. Like Bashir and Garrick have a more academic type friendship,
it really,
where they're just
yeah, like it showed why like Bashir like needs Garrick. He has to have that kind of conversation, whereas like with O'Brien, it's definitely a different sort of
they're
like
just
they're just
they're just
brohams.
bros.
Yeah,
Like they just go and they like go to the holodeck and fight battles and just kind of like bro down.
grab a
Whereas him and
beer.
Garrick are like discussing literature and music and philosophy and blah.
Yeah, it's a little
It's
bit
just
more mental sparring. Yeah.
I I I really thought that was really cool how they offset the beginning scenes of the two episodes with Bashir's like two best friends.
Yeah.
Um and then I wrote down the this entire Tal'Shiar Obsidian Order fleet decloaks at DS9, and they're all freaking out. They're like,
Yeah, my note was
"Oh
like
my
Chief
god!"
is called to the ops because of odd readings. And they're like looking at the screen, and the first time I saw that, that was like pretty awesome, man. And like to see it again on the screen is a lot of fun. And you get this cool shot of all the ships like lining up, and they're like freaking out, and they're readying up for battle, and then the ships just start going through the wormhole, and they're like, dude, we gotta get the Federation on the line.
They're like, the Cardassians don't have cloaking devices. It's like, well, they do now.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of confusion and a lot. I thought it was really kind of a fun scene.
And then two, and then we go to Garrick and Anabra Tain again, and
they're like talking
they're
about
kind
like
of
Garrick's list.
yeah, they're all talking about like who they would kill,
He's
who
like
they
got
want to
Ducat. Yeah,
kill.
Ducat's on the top of that one.
I thought that was great. And then they get into Garrick's interrogation skills, and Anabra Tain mentions that there was one interrogation in particular where Garrick got this guy to spill all these secrets without even having to hurt him.
Just
And I
staring at
thought
him
that
for
was
4 hours.
yeah. And that's just like another kind of like, man, we have some like the Cardassian interrogation scenes throughout Star Trek are brutal. I mean, of course, we have like the "There Are Four Lights" one,
Mm-hmm.
with Picard, um, and we're gonna get another interrogation scene coming up. And then I wrote down too, the Cardassian bravado is so thick between the two.
Yeah.
Um, and especially when they're discussing Mila and how she knows too much. Because Anabra Tain's basically like, yeah, I'm gonna take her out
Yeah.
because and Garrick's like,
Yeah, my
really?
note was like back up above there was old ladies on his kill list.
Yeah. You're like, what?
Yeah, and
And you
they
can kind of
noted
see,
the and that's when they're like talking about his assignment too and his like Tane's messages and like his like
because you could,
yeah, it was a really interesting scene, kind of like really giving out a lot of backstory,
and you could see Anabra Tain at this point is really starting to kind of like you're seeing the cracks kind of in his senility. He's just kind of like losing it a little bit. He's getting a little too full of himself,
Well, he's just
and
ready to like eliminate his allies, and he's killed his
yeah,
some of his closest allies, and
and
so it's he's not exactly the most trustworthy guy, or someone who should really he's given those signals that maybe he shouldn't be followed at this point.
and
Um,
then and then also with it kind of harkens back to when that Romulan notes of like you guys say a bunch of shit, but you're not saying anything kind
yeah,
of statement, like they're just like talking, they're not saying anything, and it
yeah.
cracks me up because it's their conversations throughout the whole 2 episode arc here, just like they're just like they you can tell that they do not trust or like each other, like they would flip on the other one as soon as they could, and
Well,
you
it's
could
more
tell there's like
interesting too
no
once you
trust.
know the context later on in the episode, and
um
you get to see the stations on alert, and like we actually get the they know that the Defiant has to stay on a station to guard Bajor, and my next note is like with an arrow, Cisco ignores that, and we
yeah,
actually get to see them start the planetary bombardment of the Founders' homeworld. Um, and then as soon as they're like getting ready, they're getting into position for it, and the Defiant's cloak fails in the Gamma Quadrant, and so they're stuck there, and we get this whole little like um section that where it's sabotaged by Eddington, and it's like I don't
yeah,
know if that's when
um
we really, because we've seen editing a few times at this point in episodes, but this is the really, I think this might be the first time he's really kind of brought to the forefront, and it's interesting too because he's like acting on direct orders from Admiral Todd or Todman, and
yeah.
one of the first things he does is sabotage, and they like play it out like he's trying to follow orders and do it because he doesn't think it's the safe answer for them to go try and rescue Odo. You know what I mean?
And this kind of, yeah, you're right, it sets up kind of one of the best villain
Yeah,
arcs
Cisco tells him because
in
he
DS9.
says, "Hey, let me stay on the bridge. I'll serve my command." And Cisco's like, "All right, only
And
because I trust someone who wears that uniform. Take your station, Mister Anything." And so that that sets up that really deep betrayal later on
the
as the
way
series progresses.
they shot that scene of when they find out that the cloaking device fails, they show it from Eddington looking back over his shoulder to the rest of the bridge, and he's got this like look on his face, and like the second you see it, you're like, Eddington did that. Like
Yeah.
you just know it, you know?
Well,
And then so like um you just and then they go to like the Garrick begins the interrogation of Odo with that device
yeah, the
where
device
it
which
doesn't
I'm
allow,
surprised we didn't see more of that, the quantum stasis field or whatever.
yeah, it doesn't allow Odo to shapeshift. And so I think my interpretation of this scene was that um Odo as the prisoner was actually winning the interrogation. Even though he was breaking down physically, he wasn't breaking. And Garrick was the one that was like losing his mind
Oh
because he
yeah,
was
which
like,
didn't want to be there, and of course he did is get Odo to it's a little back and forth, and he's like, just tell me anything. I know there's something you haven't told anybody, and it's basically this is where Odo reveals that he wants to go home, and it's actually right before this the cut between Garrick initiating the quantum field and Odo getting old because it's like a real fast cut. In between there, we see that scene where I mentioned where Kira wants to go help Odo, and she's like, "We need to go save him." You know what I mean? And there's a note there too that so Garrick kind of goes back and reveals to Auburn Tane that Odo didn't break, and Tane tells Garrick that he has to go eliminate Odo. But Lovak tells him, no, I want Odo to, so I want to send him back to the Tal'Shiar for testing and this and that. And so Tane says he acquiesces in the interests of cooperation. But of course, we find out later what's really going on.
yeah,
And yeah.
and then the trap is sprung because they
Well,
start
I was
smashing
gonna
his
say we
plane.
get that interaction with him and Lovak where Garrick like Lovak corners him and is like, "What's your interest in the founder? Why are you trying to save him?" And Garrick's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not trying to save anybody. You know, you agreed with me that he was valuable." And Lovak's like, "Hmm." And of course, knowing what's actually going on there is he's like, why are you like trying to protect this founder?" And Garrick's like still trying to keep the facade of being like, "Oh no, I'm really with you guys." And so there's like layers to this interaction because later we find out, of course, who Lovak's true identity is. And so that's actually the different layers in that little confrontation I found really interesting. And that's when you get the order on the bridge to open fire. And their very immediate reaction is 30% of the planet's crust is destroyed. Devastating. The life signs haven't changed. And that's that oh shit moment where you're like, what? And then all of a sudden you get this. They go, Jem'Hadar ships emerging from the nebula, and they're like, how many? 150.
150,
And that's like,
and they're
they're
just
all,
getting ripped apart.
yeah. And someone actually yells out, it's a trap, which is, of course, the classic Star Trek line, or
It's a
Star Wars,
trap.
it's a trap. And you see the bridge getting like taken apart and all these explosions. And Lovak tries to call down to engineering and doesn't get a response. And he turns to Tane and says, I'll be in engineering. You have the bridge. And he runs off. And that's actually an important moment when you're thinking about it when looking back. And of course, you actually get it just as a good old double fist punch, which I think is when Garrick runs down.
The
Tane
Kirk
starts like
maneuver.
taking over the bridge and starts yelling, and Garrick kind of like slinks off and sneaks off the bridge to try and go free Odo. And it's
But I
exactly it. The
do.
good old double punch. He does the Kirk maneuver to take out that Romulan guard. And
How
you,
about the great? How about the classic DS9 space battle?
dude, the
Like
effects were
you get
great.
those you get those sweeping shots from the perspective of the Jem'Hadar ship, where like it's just flying in, just like ripping through all of
Yeah.
the Cardassian and birds of prey. Just I love those shots when they.
This was one of the
DS9.
first times we got like a lot of action with a lot of ships on screen at once, whereas traditionally Star Trek was one shot shooting a laser beam and then the shot reacting with shields and back and forth. So it was
Hmm.
like definitely like a major. I wouldn't be surprised to learn this was one of the bigger budget episodes of the season, and they did a really good job with it. Um, so like, and we've got like Garrick like freeing like Odo, and they're about to run off when Lovak confronts him with the phaser, and then reveals that they need this device in order to get on their runabout, which shocks them both, and they're like, you know, why are you like helping us? And it's revealed then that Lovak is a changeling, and that no changeling has ever hurt another changeling. And they have this cool interaction where like, and it's again, it's an Odo moment where he realizes you did this. You've made this happen in order to decimate the Obsidian Order and the Tal'Shiar. And Lovak, of course, admits that it was actually Tane's idea, but that once they learned of it, they did everything they could to put it in motion and advance it. And he has a great
It
line where
makes
he
you
says,
wonder.
the
It
line
kind of
is,
makes you wonder too. Kind of makes you wonder too, like where we saw in Picard, like who's the changelings now? It
well,
starts to kind of put that kernel in your mind of like who's
well,
a changeling.
what he says specifically is he says the only threats left in the Alpha Quadrant are the Federation and the Klingons. And so going along those lines, like absolutely, it kind of puts that seed, like what's the next level, you know? Um, it goes back to the bridge, which is like destroyed. Garrick is like told Odo, get to the shuttle. I'm gonna try and save Tane. I have to, right? And they have
Yeah.
some more back and forth with Tane, and I love it because Odo actually comes up and knocks Garrick out to like rescue him. And he's like, I'm not waiting anymore, and he just leaves Tane in the background.
And
Uh,
Tane's just like mumbling like insanely,
Incoherently,
you
and yeah,
know.
he's lost it. And like, no, I can't go back to my quiet life, and and that kind of thing. And of course, they take off, and then you see the warbird explode, and you get
I
this
gotta
scene with the Jem'Hadar chasing the runabout, and they're like going back and forth, and he does the "We have no shields." Dun dun dun. Here comes the Defiant.
I wrote these are my next two notes. I only wrote two things. Defiant rules and Cisco rules.
Nice.
He's like attack pattern Omega, and then it's just like blasting through all these ships. The Defiant is freaking
My
awesome.
specific
Like,
ones are Jem'Hadar chasing around about no shields. Garrick is sorry. Odo understands. Defiant is here, and so
yep.
it's good action and effects, and then it just the Defiant heads home. And I've got a note on there. We already mentioned Kira is like glad that Odo's back, and it's like this weird awkward thing where she's like standing at him, and they're like, "Hey," and he's like, "Hey, I'm so happy you're here," and she's like, "I'm so happy you're here," and they're like, and it's like that whole "will you, they won't they" thing. And then you have this moment where they compare the battle to Wolf 359, which with Cisco isn't
Yeah.
particularly interesting. It's like a Wolf 359 moment for the Cardassians and the Tal Shiar, and their like fleets are now decimated. And the admiral has a line about don't do it again or you'll get court-martialed or promoted, which of course is
Yep.
foreshadowing to Cisco becoming a captain finally, right? And then you kind of end in Garrick's wrecked shop, and there's a cool shot where he moves to the dust, and you have like a figure shadowy standing behind him, kind of like that Cardassian standing over Odo, but this time it is Odo, and there's that really good interaction with him, um, where at the end of it, like Odo invites him to get breakfast, and Garrick's like, "I thought you didn't eat," and he's like, "I don't." But he's like found, so it's cool. You have the contradiction of like the friendship of Bashir and Garrick at the start of the two episodes, the contradiction of O'Brien and Bashir in the middle, and then it ends with like the discovery of this new relationship for Garrick and Odo, who are like these aliens that both like long for home, that can't return to their
Exactly.
species, and it like wraps up in this way. And I thought that in itself was kind of like a nice circle and was
That's
really
what
interesting,
I
and it
wrote
leads
that
to like Odo and Garrick's like that. I thought that was really cool.
I wrote that exact thing down too. So their desire to go home. In Garrick's case, he was exiled from home, whereas Odo is kind of a self-imposed exile because Odo has been offered to go home to Great Lynx several times, and he has turned it down
Yeah,
to stay with the solids.
he has his reasons,
And so
but
they're both like in their own exiles, really.
yeah, and I thought that was really interesting, and like so I thought that was a really great way to end this like pair of episodes. And I really enjoyed watching DS9. It's been a long time since I got a lot of really good DS9, and I love it.
Oh man, and like this
just
episode,
great
like
characters, man, great characters.
It sets up so much for the future. Like you have the Dominion War, you've got Cisco and Eddington.
It was a really big game changer. It was a big episode.
I mean, because then I think at the end of this season, which is coming up close, you've got the Klingon Federation War, and then you've got Worf coming in at the beginning of season 4.
It's the ramp up. It was the ramp up into like where DS9 really started hitting its stride and really started doing and you can see it with this episode where it really was a 2-parter, but it wasn't referred to as such. And the truth is, this is really where a lot of the episode arcs start hitting more than one episode or start building, which is great. And I love that storytelling.
Yeah. And like, I think Star Trek DS9 was at its peak when it really started hitting the Dominion.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, out of 5 stars, I give this one a solid 4. Like,
100%. Yeah, 4, 5 for me. I like Garrick a lot. I really like the Garrick Odo interactions, and I just thought it was a great episode. Like I said, there's a bunch of really good lines in there.
So many layers. I mean, just like we've mentioned before. I mean, it's like the perfect episode to set up pretty much the next 4 seasons of DS9, and I think this might have been a Ronald D. Moore episode as well, because he was heavily involved in DS9 and the Dominion War arc.
Yeah.
But yeah, 4 out of 5. I'd watch it over and over again.
Yeah. Well,
I think honestly,
I
think this might be the best episode of Shuffle Trek we've watched.
It was really good. We've had some good episodes, but I can't wait to get into more. I just love Star Trek, man. Every time I'm having fun watching it lately.
Watch the next one. We're gonna get like the Alan Moraine stupid video game one that they get.
We'll see.
Like Spock's brain or Crusher, the ghost one.
Don't jinx us, man. Well, on that note, let's we're gonna go ahead and put up our awesome mugs, which you can order on akbog.com. And otherwise, I hope you guys tune in soon. We'll catch you guys before long, eh?
Sounds good. Thanks again.
Have a good one. Let's go to the mugs.
Like a Maserati, yeah, I'm taking off. Like a MiG-25, I'm taking off.